Hello, reporter room investigators. Come on in, come on in. We have a lot to talk about in the BRYAN KOHBERGER case today. Oh my gosh. Come on in. Tell me what state, what country, what province, or what continent even that you where you hail from. Whatever you feel comfortable sharing. We have a lot to unpack in the BRYAN KOHBERGER case. Today, we're going to be talking about how law enforcement knew where the DoorDash driver Molly was after the crimes were committed. The prosecution is not happy with the defense. We're going to dig into that a little bit. We're going to talk about Papa Rogers and the 4 top alternative perpetrators that the defense is going to probably be trying to use, and BRYAN KOHBERGER's alibi. We don't have one. So is he going to take the stand? And we're going to talk about, is the judge being unfair to the defense team? So let's get started. BRYAN KOHBERGER is innocent until proven guilty, but this is not a courtroom. I'm not a judge. You're not a judge. He's the one that the motions are being filed on behalf of. He's the one that's going to be standing trial. So let's talk about the defense delay. And let me pull up this really quick. So we do have an image of BRYAN KOHBERGER. Happy Friday to you. Hope you're having a good Friday.
Was allegedly able to stab 4 Idaho college students to death in just a few minutes. Well, it's a big question for the prosecution to explain to the rest of us, specifically the jury, but some insight into his past may give us some clues. Turns out KOHBERGER knew how to use a knife. Bryan worked as a fish cutter. He was a fillet man when he was in high school, trained to cut and fillet raw fish. I know how to do it. Means you got to know how to use a knife. We'll see how KOHBERGER was.
This is Reporter Room with Jessica Della Davies.
Okay. So not only did BRYAN KOHBERGER work as a fish cutter, but he also worked as a butcher, according to his CV. So let's go ahead, come on in, tell me where you're from and what number thumbs up you are. So we're going to start with the delays, and then we're going to talk about DoorDash driver Molly, some new information on that, the 4 alternative perpetrators, BRYAN KOHBERGER's alibi, and the judge, is he being unfair to the defense team? We're going to talk about all of that today. So let's start off with the delay. So the judge presiding over the hearing with BRYAN KOHBERGER said on Wednesday that he would review the defense's request to postpone the trial, but reminded both sides to be prepared for the trial to begin as scheduled in August. Now, jury selection begins at the end of July, and the trial is scheduled to begin on August the 11th. I will be airing the trial here on Reporter Room. So the prosecution has opposed any further delay, citing the need for timely justice for the victims' families. The judge stated he's not likely to delay the trial, and he said, and this is his exact words, "I fully encourage everyone to continue as if the trial is going to take place when it is scheduled for." So again, he says, "I reserve the right to write the decision that I come to, but as of now, I will tell you that it's likely you are going to trial on the date indicated." So that's August 11th, folks. That's coming right up. We are June 20th, so less than about 6 weeks out. So the defense team, led by Ann Taylor, claimed that the nearly 68 terabytes of discovery that was turned over to the defense team by the prosecution is so much data that there's no way that she could effectively go through all of it ahead of time. Now, mind you, the judge told Ann Taylor weeks and weeks ago that she should have gotten paralegals, that she should have brought this to his attention earlier. But the prosecution was really unhappy with this also. So to put that number in perspective, how much is 68 terabytes? It's equal to 17 million photographs or 68,000 videos. Now, if the prosecution is ready, and they said that they've been ready to go for months now, they wanted to go this in the spring, and Ann Taylor successfully got a delay. She successfully got the trial moved to Ada County. But the prosecution was only a couple of weeks ahead of Ann Taylor. So if they're ready, she should also be ready. Now, the defense's second point centered around the sealed information. And we're going to talk about new information about the DoorDash driver in just a second. So please stay with me. That was leaked to the press, which aired in an episode of Dateline. Now, Ann Taylor was arguing that the court should allow more time for that information to cool down before going to trial. You guys, this is never going to cool down. Amazon is coming out with a docu-series on the Idaho case on July 11th. There's a book coming out. This is never going to cool down. It's just going to be more leaking, more docu-series, and more information getting out to the public. So if they could seat a jury in the O.J. Simpson case, if they could seat a jury in the Lori Vallow Daybell case, if they could seat a jury in the Chad Daybell case, then surely they can seat a jury for this case. Now, CBS 2 defense expert Ryan Black said this was what he had to say about it. He said in a case like this, the defense is always going to attempt to delay the trial for as long as they can. And if the defense loses, the state is going to, he believes, is going to get the capital punishment that they're asking for. So the delays in the trial translate to more time being alive for Bryan Kohberger, which may be why he's, a lot of you guys have wondered, like, why would he be happy to sit in jail? Well, if he delays, it's more time for him to be alive. It's more time for witnesses to pass away. It's more time for witnesses to move away. So it benefits the defense to delay. And so this isn't my opinion. This is a defense expert, Ryan Black's opinion. Now, the prosecution, on the other hand, always wants to go to the trial to start. They have the momentum, they have the media attention, and they have the victims' families to consider. And this defense expert, Ryan Black, said that the victims' families want justice. So we're going to talk about how law enforcement knew where DoorDash driver Molly was after the crimes. A lot of you guys want to know where she was parked. We're going to talk about Papa Rogers, the top 4 alternative perpetrators for the defense, and the judge being unfair. Is he being unfair to the defense? Maybe. So Ann Taylor said that she thought that she needed a delay to protect Bryan Kohberger's constitutional rights. She added that the defense motion does not come as a surprise. She added that the defense motion she didn't think that it should be a surprise. She said that it doesn't come as a surprise to her. She said they've dealt with difficulties during the 2.5-year court process. And Taylor said, quote, "We're not prepared to go to trial in this case. The discovery is vast and we have not had a chance to review it all." Now, you'll recall that Ann Taylor took on another capital punishment case. And when she made this claim to the judge, not this past hearing, but the one before that, he pushed back really hard and said, then why did you take on another capital punishment case? Now, the prosecutor, Josh Hurwitz, now he's a former U.S. attorney for Idaho, said that the delay puts the state, quote, at the whim of the media, and warned against a perpetual continuance. He stated that the defense has had enough time to prepare and does not need to learn everything about Bryan Kohberger to present a fair case. He also pointed out that they had a full-time mitigation expert whose sole purpose was to prepare for mitigation. And he said, quote, "A scorched the earth investigation is not what's required. The court should exercise its discretion and deny the motion." So let's talk about the alternative perpetrators. Who are the 4? And also we're going to talk about law enforcement knew where DoorDash Molly was after the crime. How did they know this? We're talking about Papa Rogers, and we're going to talk about the judge being unfair to the defense team in just a moment. Is he being unfair? A lot of people feel like he is, and a lot of people feel like they love this judge. So on Wednesday, the judge held a closed door hearing on the alternative perpetrator. So we did not get to see this portion of the trial, but let's consider who these 4 people are going to be. Bryan Kohberger's attorney said that they came across a tip in their review of discovery and have submitted proof of the person or persons as a real culprit rather than Bryan Kohberger. So what does the defense team actually need? The judge said he needs evidence. Is he being unfair? Those legal briefs that the prosecution and the prosecution's objections, along with the name of the person that the defense team is claiming is an alternative perpetrator, have been filed under seal. And I think, it was at the request of the defense team. And I think if she had a really viable alternative perpetrator, I think that she would probably be, yelling from the rooftops as to who that is. So let's talk about who the 4 alternative perpetrators might be. And then we're going to talk about Papa Rogers and the DoorDash driver. So, of course, number 1, I went through already, was BRYAN KOHBERGER, who's a Purple Heart recipient. He served in the Army, so not the Marines, so that people were trying to link the K-bar knife. It's a military knife, but it's not related to the Army. He has no connections that I've been able to find to Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, or Xana. And unlike BRYAN KOHBERGER, who was following Kaylee and Maddie on Instagram and had pictures of the victim's friends on his cell phone, according to Dateline NBC, BRYAN KOHBERGER doesn't have any connections to the victims that I've been able to find. Even some people were showing the dog collar and tags and saying that was related to Buddy the dog. Buddy the dog's owners, Jim and Pam Colbert, both, they have Buddy's tags. They have those tags. So the other name that's been tossed around has been Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, on again, off again boyfriend, Jack DeCour. Jack DeCour was cleared by law enforcement, according to Kaylee's father, and it is my understanding from Steve Gonzalez, which is Kaylee's dad, that Jack was at home, and law enforcement knows that he was at home because his cell phone was moving around his house during the crimes. So in my opinion, the fact that his cell phone is picked up moving around the house is going to make it very hard to rule in Jack DeCour. So that, in my opinion, rules out Jack D. The other, number 3, is Hoodie Guy. Now, some people have tried to say that John Jack Showalter, that's Hoodie Guy. Now, he walked Kaylee and Maddie down to the grub truck. We all heard them talking and, heard them say, I told Adam everything. And a lot of people, wondered about that, including myself, before they arrested BRYAN KOHBERGER. However, my understanding is that law enforcement already cleared John Jack Showalter, which means they know where John Jack was at the time that the crimes were committed. Number 4 is the DoorDash driver. Now, this is the only person I could think of as an alternative suspect, but after seeing Molly, I don't think she fits the profile. I don't think she would have had a motive. Moreover, she says she saw Brian, that she was parked right next to him. And law enforcement would be able to, they would have ruled her in or out very quickly. They would have been able to trace where she went very, very quickly. Not only would they be able to get CCTV camera footage of the vehicle, but they would be able to use the drive portal. And let me show you what that is. Let me take this down and bring this up. Thank you so much for joining me. Happy Friday to you guys. So this is the drive portal. Let me make sure I'm not blocking it. Nope, we're good. Okay, so this is a drive portal. So this is, I went back, I went back to 2022, and I just wanted to see what it is. So it says there's a dashboard where I can see all of my DoorDash drivers. Yes, you can see all your active orders, order histories, and canceled orders in the drive portal. Additionally, you should be able to order online, ordering online to ask for their delivery dashboard. So you can literally track your DoorDash driver. Oh, I think this is just going to take me to the mail. Okay, so you can log in and track where the DoorDash driver is. So they would have been able to use this to be able to say exactly where Molly was. So there, I don't, in my opinion, let me know if you have a different one. I don't think there's any question about where Molly was at the time of the crimes. And I also think that that portal is going to show it. Also, sure, her DNA wasn't found on the knife sheath, and she just doesn't fit the profile. There's no motive. There's nothing connecting her. So, so is the judge being unfair to BRYAN KOHBERGER by asking him to provide evidence. So let's look at this together and just see what the standard is in Idaho. So my sourcing on this is an attorney's website in Idaho, and he talks about the alternative perpetrator defense in Idaho. And he says, can I argue that someone else did it? The alternative perpetrator defense in Idaho criminal cases. So this is a criminal defense attorney, and I thought it would be good to see it from his perspective, what you need. And we can see, is the judge being unfair to Bryan Kohberger? So if you've been charged with a crime you didn't commit, you may feel like the system is stacked against you. But in Idaho, the law gives you the right to present a full defense, including evidence that someone else committed the crime. This legal strategy is called the alternative perpetrator defense, and it can be a critical tool in clearing your name. Now, this is what you have to do to argue an alternative perpetrator. This allows the person who's been charged with the crime to argue that someone else is actually responsible for the crime. And it's not enough to simply deny guilt. This, again, is coming from a criminal defense attorney. You must present facts that reasonably suggest a different person committed the offense. This is both your U.S. Constitution and Idaho law. It's your right. And like everything in the criminal justice system, the defense comes with rules. So what are those rules? Is the judge being unfair to Bryan Kohberger? Well, the alternative perpetrator defense is allowed in Idaho, but it must comply with the Idaho rules of evidence. So this isn't a rule made up arbitrarily by this particular judge. This is the rule of law in Idaho. The evidence must be relevant. And you'll remember that the judge, not in this last hearing, but the one before that, told Ann Taylor she needed more evidence. Your evidence must directly relate to the crime. If it helps prove that another person had motive, means, and opportunity to commit the offense, it's considered relevant under Idaho Rule of Evidence 401. Number 2, it can't just be a distraction. So this criminal defense attorney shares that even if the evidence is relevant, the judge may exclude it under Rule 403 if it, 1, unfairly confuses the jury, 2, is more prejudicial than helpful, 3, creates unnecessary delays. So this keeps the trial focused on facts and not speculation. Number 3, watch out for hearsay. If you're offering a statement from someone else, like a confession, that's considered hearsay under Rule 804b3, it's only admissible if it goes against the person's own criminal interest and it's supporting by other evidence that proves to be trustworthy. And I think this is where, the judge was kind of sticking his point there with Ann Taylor, saying that she needed evidence. She needed evidence, and what he had right now wasn't admissible. So this isn't him just arbitrarily deciding this. This is the rule of law in Idaho. And he says this is a criminal defense attorney saying that the Idaho courts use a 7-part test to consider whether confessions are reliable enough to be shown to a jury. So we don't need to worry about that because Bryan Kohberger did not confess. All right, so let's continue on. I want to talk about Molly. So come on in. Tell me where you're from. Let me know if you think that the judge is being unfair to Bryan Kohberger. If you think the judge is being fair, put fair. If you think the judge is being unfair, we're going to do a poll. Put unfair, and let's just see where you guys are at. So let's talk about Molly a little bit, because ABC News has also confirmed that it's Molly, and we've got some new information on this. So we knew about the body cam. If you haven't seen that, you'll want to go to not the last live stream, but the one before, and you can see Molly there. I very clearly show you what she's saying. And so Molly, says she's the DoorDash driver, and she is the DoorDash driver. So get this. Okay, so in the video, this is what she's heard saying. She says, I have to testify in that big schmurder, watching my words here, case here because I'm the DoorDash driver. When asked to clarify what case, she says, the schmurder case with the Idaho girls. I'm the DoorDash driver. She says, I saw Bryan there. I parked next to him. So a lot of people are wondering where Bryan and Molly were parked. We thought maybe Molly, the DoorDash driver, and Bryan had passed each other, but we didn't know that they were parked next to each other. So were they next to each other? Like he pulled in? Were they nose to nose? So, but she didn't say, I saw someone. I have to testify. She said, I saw Bryan. So was she able to pick him out of a lineup? Now, Idaho authorities have said it was Xana who placed the order. She received her order around 4 a.m. on November 13th. And they believe that the actual doing away with people happened between 4:07 and 4:20, obviously, because there were 4 different people being done away with. Now, Commander Reuben Harris, and this is what the new part, with the Pullman Police Department, confirmed to ABC News that the body cam video of Molly is authentic, that it was taken in September of 2024. The woman's charge was amended to first-degree negligent driving. So that's what she was charged with. A lot of people have said, oh, well, she was charged with being under the influence. No, she was charged with first-degree negligent driving, and she pled guilty. So that's, I don't think that's going to hurt her testimony, in my opinion, because that's what that was the ultimate charge. Now, Pullman is located about 10 miles west of Moscow, Idaho. So I did think that was really interesting because a lot of you guys were saying, well, what was she ultimately charged with? And I told you guys that when she did the breathalyzer, it didn't come back as being anything. That she, that was fine. She did say she had taken prescription medicine for pain, a hydrocodone tablet, but 10 milligrams. A lot of people, and she does have MS, you guys. She has MS. So that is very painful. And then, so a lot of people were like, well, is it going to hurt her credibility? I don't think so, because I don't think first-degree negligent driving is going to hurt her credibility, in my opinion. Let me know if you have a different take on it. All right, so let me put this back up. Okay, so I want to see where we are on the poll. Do you think that it's the judge is being fair or unfair to the defense team and to Bryan Kohberger? I just want to see where you guys are at. And all opinions are welcome. Just, respect them, respect each other. So Enjas says, welcome to Leslie. And thank you so much for modding today. Enjas is our head mod, along with brother Mike and Sixth Sense Amelia. So thank you so much for modding. Patricia is modding today, and so is Dabs, and so is Tara and Barbara. Thank you guys all for modding. All right, so let's look and see where you guys are at on this. Wicked is modding, and Christy's modding. Thank you so much, you guys. And Top Cat's here too. Great. It's awesome to see you. Thank you for modding today. And DM is also here modding. Thank you so much for modding. So Miss Fitnick says, did anyone see the long crime? Confirm the video is indeed the DoorDash driver. Yes, it has been confirmed. It was confirmed by the Idaho Statesman. It's been confirmed by ABC News that is the DoorDash driver. They confirmed it, that the video is legitimate. And then I told you that she is going to testify. She is going to testify. And also that what she was actually charged with, which a lot of you guys wanted to know. So I'm like, all right, well, let's find out. What was she charged with? So great question. Okay, so Vicky says fair. Brother Mike thinks fair. Dwight, fair. Fair from Subpoena and Armand. Fair from Tori. Wicked says fair. Grafter thinks it's unfair. Texas Life Julie thinks it's fair. Brian R says fair. Mama Saurus Bear says fair. Christy says fair. Barbara says praying the trial will go as planned. I think it is. I think if there was going to be delay, we would have heard about it today. Christine thinks it's fair. Welcome, Susan. Dabs thinks it's fair. Per Anderson thinks it's fair. Yeah, please be respectful and don't mention other content creators in the chat, either in a positive or not positive way. Just don't do it. I don't want to get involved in any drama. Jamie says fair. Dee says fair. Jessica says her boyfriend was done away with in front of her before these happened, though, right? I don't know what the timeline is on that, Jessica. I don't know what the timeline, if it was before or if it was after. I don't know. Let me see what I can find out for you. That's the first time I've heard that question. I was just focused on finding out what she was actually charged with. Welcome from Kentucky. Top Cat thinks it's fair. All right, so Christine thinks it's fair. Dwight says, Jessica, that was her husband. Yeah, her husband was done away with. Alice says fair. Let's see. So it seems like most everybody thinks that the judge is being fair. So that's really interesting. Mama says he was already parked on the side street. Lol Cow says, no, she pulled in. She didn't see Brian's car. Well, she did. She says she did, and she's being called as a witness. So she not only says she did, she says she saw Brian. She says she saw Brian. Diane thinks it's fair. So, and you're right, Jessica. She saw Brian. That's what she said. She said she saw Brian. Susan thinks it's fair. Sapina says, you don't know that, lol cow. Oh, okay. All right. So Donna thinks it's fair and Wicked thinks it's fair. Thanks for modding today, Donna. Thanks for modding today, Kathleen. Dion says, I think he was parked somewhere between the trees and the dumpster, and Molly was at the end of the driveway. And Vicky says, where was it that she she has MS? I saw the fibromyalgia and arthritis. She said she had, she talked about an MS hug, and Veronica is actually the one that caught this. That's why I love reading your comments, you guys. If I don't respond to your comment, it means you were caught in the YouTube filter. And if you notice, there's certain words I don't say to you guys. I don't use certain words out of respect for the platform, but also in case you have little ones for the, but those words that you're using can cause you to get caught in the YouTube filter, which means I don't see your comments. Lady says fair. Think for yourself as a butcher. Well, explains a lot. Yeah, he has a on his CV, his resume. He said he was a butcher. Barbara thinks it's fair. Susan says fair. So it seems like, yeah, we're a G-rated channel, guys. So think about which words you're using so you don't get filtered out. Okay. Yeah, I love Judge Hip too. We call him Judge Hip here. Veronica's here. All right. Thank you, Veronica. So Veronica thinks he's fair. Thanks for modding today, Barbara. Trina thinks it's fair. All right. Dion thinks it's fair. So, and Edjosh thinks it's fair. So we have a lot of people that think it's fair. All right. So I want to welcome Lenny as a brand new Reporter Room channel member. Yay. Thank you so much for becoming a channel room member. This is a great time to do it because the trial is coming right up and we're going to watch the trial together as a Reporter Room family. We're going to, if you don't want to watch the trial by yourself, I don't talk during the trial. I just let the judge and the prosecutors and the defense do their thing. But I do type in the chat and interact with you guys in the top chat. So if you want to watch it with me and you don't want to watch it by yourself, why sit at home and watch it by yourself? I want to thank Midwest for being a Reporter Room channel member for a month. I want to thank NJAZ. Wow, thank you for gifting a Reporter Room membership. If you're watching, come on up and talk to me. And I want to tell Brother Mike, thank you so much for the $1.99 super sticker. That is really generous and kind of you. Thank you so much. And Alice Lynn, Beauty and More, welcome as a brand new Reporter Room channel member. So welcome everybody. And if you got a channel membership, please make sure you say thank you to NJAZ. And Donna says, prayers for the victims, families, may justice be served. Yes, and no matter whether you think he did it or didn't do it, we all want the same thing. We all want justice. So I want to talk about, a little bit about what Bethany Funke saw. And then I want to talk about Bryan Kohberger's alibi. Is he going to take the stand? And then we're going to talk about Papa Rogers. So a lot of you guys, I get this question a lot. So I do want to address your questions. So this is what Bethany saw. Now, we know that it meant a lot to Ann Taylor because, as I shared with you, Bethany originally did not want to meet with the defense team. And we don't know why. And maybe that she just didn't want to help the guy she thought did away with her friends. Could have been something like that. It could have been she didn't have the resources or money to travel back to Idaho to meet with the defense team. It could have been that she already knew that there was a grand jury underway and that there wasn't going to be a preliminary hearing. So she didn't want to help. I don't know why she didn't want to sit down with them, but the defense team was absolutely adamant that they wanted to meet with her. Because she saw somebody taking something off and dropping it into a bag. Now, after Ann Taylor heard what Bethany did see, she then tried to suppress, which means she didn't want Bethany to be allowed to testify. Remember, if it's good for the defense team, they want it to come in. If it's bad for the defense team, they want to suppress the evidence. So she tried to, after she interviewed with Bethany, her private investigator, whose name is Richard Bettoni, who was working for Ann Taylor and Bryan Kohberger, once they met with her, she did ultimately agree to meet. So I don't know what the problem was, but once they met with her, they then tried to suppress her testimony. But supposedly she saw somebody leaving and dropping something into a bag. And a lot of us think that how, based on his how-to essay, there have been a couple of ways to skirt around Locard's principle, right? And Locard's principle says that every contact leaves a trace. So if you were the perpetrator, how would you get around that? How would you minimize it? Well, Bryan tells us in his how-to essay that there's a coverall that you can buy that minimizes transfer of DNA and other materials. So if he dextered out his Hyundai Elantra and wore a black coverall, and we saw the Dickies receipt, right? We've seen the receipt. We just don't know what it was for. If he had the black coverall on, and then how would you keep that from being transferred to the car to minimize DNA transfer, to minimize evidence transfer? Well, you would take it off. So Bethany saw somebody, and I don't know if it was inside the house or just outside the house, taking something off and dropping it into a brown paper bag. And this is where Ann Taylor thought maybe there was a second perpetrator, or maybe it was somebody else besides Bryan, which is why she wanted to talk to Bethany. Now, whatever Bethany told her was not good for Bryan Kohberger. It was not good for the defense because she immediately tried to suppress the evidence. She didn't want the jury to see it. So let's talk about Bryan Kohberger and the Facebook account Papa Rogers. So this is the Papa Rogers account. Let me see. This picture is just huge. Okay, so according to law enforcement, they are convinced, this is a quote, that Bryan Kohberger is behind the Papa Rogers account. This is according to Outkick. Outkick previously reported that the alias that had posted several specific predictions about the crimes prior to Bryan Kohberger's arrest. Now, Papa Rogers' psychic-like predictions were as if he had an inside access to the investigation or was at the scene of the crime. So a lot of people have wondered, was this Bryan Kohberger? Was this someone else? Was this law enforcement? Now, it was Papa Roger who first mentioned the sheath. This is a month before law enforcement announced that the sheath that was found underneath into the side of Maddie was left behind at the house. But his predictions did become less accurate. Now, some people say that it was intentional to steer the investigation toward a fake conclusion, while other people say, well, this proves that it wasn't Papa Roger. So let's look at some of his posts. Let me make sure I'm not blocking. I am. Let me move myself over here. Okay. So first of all, we have this post, which was posted on December 21st. And remember, Bryan Kohberger was identified as a suspect on December 19th. He wasn't arrested until December 30th. It says, regardless of what has been released, I believe that this was an S-motivated crime. Now, I think that's the case too. And I think that he would have been very surprised when he entered Maddie's room to see Kaylee there. And it doesn't mean that he was planning to do something to Maddie, but we know now from what Bryan Kohberger searched, according to Dateline NBC, what he was into, right? It's creepy, what he liked to watch. And he liked to watch women that were passed out, women that were, not able to consent. So we're intoxicated. So not able to consent. That's what he was into. So is this why he waited till everybody went to bed to enter the house? He then posts on December 20th, so that's one day before, did the perpetrator drive, walk, or some combination of both to the scene? He also said, I feel like the white car isn't relevant. So I think this is interesting because, we now know that the white Hyundai Elantra is relevant. And so, maybe it wasn't Papa Roger, because not everything he said was straight up accurate. But some people feel like he was intentionally trying to throw off the investigation by saying that. He said, fight me. Law enforcement is no closer to solving this than they were 30 days ago. So this was on December 13th. Of course, we know that they did not identify Bryan Kohberger, according to the prosecution, until December 19th, and they didn't arrest him until December 30th. So at that point, maybe they weren't. And he said, Papa Roger, this was posted this is in the University of Idaho case discussion group. I'm in that group, or I was in that group at the time. And then it says Papa Roger is wiped out from Facebook. And so he was ultimately just completely disappeared on the day that Bryan Kohberger was arrested. Now, he had frantically commented on the case for over a month, and then he just stopped. So why did he stop? And get this, and I think this is really important. This all stopped, and the account was taken down right after Bryan Kohberger was arrested. So did the person behind the account lose access to Facebook? Did they lose interest in the Idaho case? I think that's unlikely. Or was he arrested? A lot of people feel like, including law enforcement, that Bryan Kohberger was behind this. Now, on a more technical point, the Facebook account likely won't play a role in the prosecution. They probably won't need it. So we may never know if Bryan Kohberger was behind that account or not. I hope we find out, but we might not find out until after the trial is over. I think after the trial, there'd be no reason to keep anything under a gag order. So even if they don't bring it up at the trial, I think we'll find out after. But we may not know for a while. And in addition to the knife sheath, authorities had Bryan Kohberger's cell phone pinging in the crime. This says 12 times. We now know from the FBI that it was 23 times. And he also pinged at the house at 9 a.m. the morning of the crimes. Why was he back there? We know police seized hair samples, fabric with red stains, a single black glove, all from Bryan Kohberger's Pullman, Washington apartment. So circumstantial evidence is enough to convict somebody of doing a crime like this. And the DNA on the knife sheath puts Bryan Kohberger and maybe Papa Rogers at the crime scene. So I just wanted to talk about a little bit of an update on Papa Rogers. Let me put this back up. Okay, how would I just put a picture of Bryan up there? So anybody comes by knows who and what we're talking about. All right, so I think that's really, really interesting, you guys. So I want to know what you guys think about all of this. Do you think that? What do you think about the DoorDash driver? I'd like to know what you think about the alternative perpetrators. Is the defense going to be able to provide evidence for an alternative perpetrator? And then I want to talk about Bryan Kohberger's alibi. Is he going to get on the stand? Because here we are, and Bryan Kohberger did not provide an alibi. And the prosecution said that they needed time, if he was going to provide an alibi, to be able to look into that and to possibly rebut the alibi. And so here we are, and we still don't have an alibi for Bryan Kohberger. So does this mean that there's not going to be an alibi in this case? I don't think there is. I don't think there's going to be an alibi. I don't think the judge is going to allow Bryan Kohberger to just simply say, I was driving around in my car, gazing at the moon and the stars. I don't think that's going to wash. It doesn't fit the legal definition of what's required for an alibi in this case in the state of Idaho. And the judge isn't being unfair. He's just following the law, which he didn't set. He didn't make it up, following the laws in Idaho. So I think that the fact that he has not provided an alibi tells me that there's not going to be an alibi in this case, and that Bryan Kohberger is going to either have to take the stand and provide an alibi, or there simply won't be an alibi. So I don't know what Cy Ray is going to testify to. He may be able to just simply try to come at the phone pings of where Bryan Kohberger was and just, say that the car was going in a different direction. But I don't know how far that's going to actually go with the jury, because I think that's going to be really easy. Let me know if you have a different take. I think it's going to be really easy for the jury to rebut. All they have to say is, yeah, but he turned around, because he did meander around in the car that night. He's trying to avoid CCTV cameras and doorbell cams. He didn't avoid all of them, obviously, but he did meander around that night. So let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section below. And if you're watching this on replay, I want to take this down for a second. And I just do want to say thank you. We're not done, but I do want to say thank you to our producers and Jazz, Sasha Angel, George Brown, Pepper, and Christy Ballantyne. And thank you to our channel members. And I want to do super thanks and coffee gratitude to Catherine Smith, Vicky G, Christine Godot, gifted channel memberships, Marco Benavides, Patricia Warner, and NJazz, and also Long Island Hillbilly. This is for the last live stream. Thank you so much for your gifted. And I want to say thank you to our channel members. If you want your name to appear just like this, it costs a couple of dollars, whereas subscribing is free and it helps me out a lot. But you can, if you're going to hang out and be in the top chat during the trial, and you're going to watch the trial, you might want to go ahead and get yourself a channel membership. It is the join button, which is next to the subscribe button. The subscribing is free. So thank you so much. And so the judge, I am going to be interested to see what we're going to find out happened in the closed door hearing. I was hoping we would find out more today. We did not. But we did find out some very interesting information regarding the DoorDash driver. So I hope that you guys are happy with that information. You guys asked me to find out, and so I did. All right, let me put this back up. All right, let me check in with chat and see where you guys are at with this. Let me see. I'm so glad you guys are here with me. Happy Friday. And after this, we're going to talk about the Lori Vallow Daybell case. I'm going to close this out and we're going to go over to the next live stream. And then after that, I'm going to be talking about updates on Jack and Lily Sullivan. So we have a lot of stuff that we're going to go through in this. Dee says there is not a solid alibi. No, you're right. There's no alibi that's been given. Now, in Idaho, to give an alibi, you have to give where you are and any witnesses that could have potentially seen you, or maybe you were caught on camera. It has to be specific. You can't just say I was out driving around in the car. And that's not the judge being unfair to Bryan Kohberger. That is the law in Idaho. He's just following it. Dion said he was totally obsessed. Squeaky Will says the judge isn't going to allow an alternative suspect to come in unless Ann Taylor provides some kind of proof, which she can't. Motion denied. So I don't know if she can or can't, but she does need to be able to specifically provide some kind of evidence that this person is tied to it. Otherwise, you could just see where you could drag somebody's reputation on international television, to try to get your client off. And if you were that person and you were, being targeted with no evidence at all, I can see that. So the judge did tell her that she needed to provide evidence. Subpoena says, if I was on the jury and there was no alibi, I'd find that interesting. Yeah. Roger said, could BK force a delay by firing Ann Taylor? I don't know, because the rest of the defense team could still proceed. That's a great question. I don't know. Theoretically he could, but would he want to? I guess, is something I would want to know, because I think she's doing a really good job for him. She is dotting every I and crossing every T. She's fighting really hard. So I don't know if, it's in his best interest to change attorneys. But if he did it and he wants to stay alive a little bit longer, then yeah, that might be, something that he might consider doing. That's a great question, Granger. Brother Mike says, oh, yeah, to the mods, please help in chat, welcome others, and remind them to press the thumbs up button. Yeah, thank you to all of our mods for making everybody feel so welcome. Afro or Troll says, Cy-Ray has been labeled as junk science in multiple cases. Yeah, he has. He has. Let me pull that up for you guys. Cy-Ray was testifying for the prosecution. Let's pull this up. He was, but what I think happened, let me pull this up and I'll share this with you. Take this down, put this one up. Okay. So who is Cy-Ray? So he is the defense team expert that was hired as a cell phone expert in an attempt to show that Brian couldn't have done away with Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Xana. Now, Newsweek sought a comment from Cy-Ray and Bryan Kohlberger's attorney. This was back when we were still in Latah County, but this is Cy-Ray here. He's in the hat. He's actually a YouTuber. He's a YouTuber now. But Cy-Ray will testify, and according to the court documents, he's going to talk about Kohlberger's mobile device and that it was south of Pullman, Washington, and west of Moscow, Idaho. And that he's going to say that the device did not travel east on the Moscow-Pullman highway in the early hours of November 13th, and thus cannot be the vehicle captured on the video along the Moscow-Pullman highway near Floyd's. Now, the judge already said he's not going to allow Ann Taylor to traffic and conspiracy theories. So he's going to be able to say where Bryan Kohlberger was up until the time that the cell phone is switched off. But at that point, the cell phone's off. It's not on. And maybe if Bryan Kohlberger would have been a little bit smarter, but, there are always plot holes in every case. He would have left his cell phone on in a different location, and that may have been given him reasonable doubt. But the fact that his cell phone is flipped off right around the time of the crimes, and then we have DoorDash driver Molly saying she saw Bryan. Oh, you guys. And then Dylan saw a man with bushy eyebrows, dressed all in black, 5'10" or taller, who was white, who was athletic build but not muscular. That just exactly fits Bryan Kohlberger's description too. But some of his work, this is Cy-Ray, has been featured on episodes of 48 Hours, 2020, the Discovery Channel, and Dateline, showcasing his investigative and technological expertise. He spent time in Afghanistan as a field advisor for an undercover team targeting improvised explosive devices. So, but here's the problem. The technology company that he set up, the ZX, was back in 2014. And it worked in both radio frequency and cell phone data. And the company was purchased by LexisNexis in 2021. Now, this is my opinion. So opinions are not facts. But in my opinion, he sold LexisNexis. But the reason he stopped being called as an expert for the prosecution is simply because the technology became outdated. Not because he did anything wrong, not because he's a bad guy, but because the technology became outdated. And so I don't know if his technology that he's coming forward with, and maybe he has new technology, I don't know. But I don't know if that's really going to help Bryan Kohlberger, especially since the prosecution is saying Kohlberger's phone was turned off. So his accomplishments, he has a great resume. They include engineering, RF drone detection sensors used by the NFL but again, this is 2015, you guys, 10 years ago, Super Bowl, and engineered the RF tracking and security technology for law enforcement and military applications. But again, it's 10 years old. Technology has changed so much over the past decade. Now, attorney Mercy Wright noticed his expertise in a social media post. He wrote on Twitter that the one judge repeatedly stated a ruling that Cy-Ray made a compelling witness. Now, that was the old judge, John Judge in Latah County. The new judge in Ada County described it as a conspiracy theory and had to remind Ann Taylor that she was an officer of the court. Okay, so this is what people are talking about when they're saying that why they believe Cy-Ray isn't being called to testify anymore. That he apparently testified, and the judge didn't even want to let his testimony in, because he felt like it was junk science. And I don't know if it was junk science or it's just the fact that, the technology becomes outdated. But, I don't have anything against the guy. He's probably a nice guy. He's probably did do a lot of testimonies for the prosecution, but I don't know if he's going to be that reliable on this particular case. Let me know if you have a different feeling about it. I don't think he's going to be that reliable on this case. And the reason that I feel that way is I think that, he had a chance. He did have a chance to update the technology or come in with something different. But the fact that Bryan Kohberger switched the cell phone off and the prosecution is saying the phone was switched off, I don't think he's going to be allowed to just like spin a conspiracy theory up. I don't think this judge is going to allow that. The Latah County judge might have, but Ann Taylor wanted to move the trial to Ada County. Her hopes were to get into a bigger city and get a more liberal jury and try to get capital punishment off the table. However, I think she ran right up against, because Latah County Judge John Judge was kind of rolling over. She wants a delay. Okay, when can you be ready? And she's the one that said summer of 2025. She picked this time. The prosecution wanted to go earlier. And at the latest, they wanted to do spring of 2025. But she's the one that wanted to delay the trial. She got that. She was one that wanted to move the trial from Latah County to Ada County. This is the defense attorney, Ann Taylor. She got that too. And now she's run straight into this judge who just isn't playing around. He follows the law in Idaho, and he's just not falling for the, damsel in distress routine that she's giving him. He's a bigger city judge. So maybe she will get a more liberal jury that's less likely to want to impose capital punishment. But the judge is not, in my opinion, not easy to manipulate. So that's a great question. Thank you for that. SD says Bryan Kohberger was very knowledgeable about how and where to look for forensic evidence in a crime scene. He was very careful. I wonder if he took apart his drain in his shower to eliminate any evidence there. I don't know about that. That's, we'll find out at the trial. But what I think from what we heard from Steve Gonsalves is, and he made a couple of appearances on a couple of different platforms, but what he said was that there were lab chemicals that he believed were from the WSU lab that were used to get rid of DNA evidence. So I don't know if he was using this for his drains or if he was using this to clean the car, the Hyundai Elantra. Chrissy, thank you. Tori says, I hope that's not what he does. Squeaky Will says, on another note, Barry Morphew got indicted today. Yeah, that is really great news. The Suzanne Morphy case. I'll be definitely starting to pick up on that one now that there's some movement. And that, if for those of you that are always feel like, and I feel like this too, in the Sebastian Rogers case, sometimes it can take years. The Megan Boswell case, it can take years to get a case to the point where you can indict someone and bring them to trial. So Veronica said, I think something more than pings. It's called a CAS report. I think it tells a little more about the pings. Yeah, and I talked about that already at length during another live stream, so I'm not going to dive into that today. Hi, Lori. Jody says, good to see everyone. Happy Friday. Happy Friday to you, Jody, and thank you for modding today. Sabina said, I just made a cup of coffee. Is 6:30 too late for coffee? It's never too late for coffee. Enjaz wants to know why we have 608 people watching, but only 187 likes. Yeah, come on, you guys. Giving a thumbs up is free. Even if you're watching on your TV, you could click up there and give a thumbs up. Brother Mike said, thank you all for supporting Jessica. She really works hard. Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you so much, Brother Mike. That means a lot to me. I do work hard. I do try to bring you guys credibly sourced information. DW said, there's no need to delay the trial. The jurors are not sequestered. They can Google and watch the videos on this case. Locale says, was the house removed? Why did they do that? That I talked about at length. I'll just briefly touch on it today. This is a great question. I have a lot of problems with the fact that the crime scene was torn down. I think this, and I talked about WSU University and the fact that I don't think they protected the students. I don't think they did their due diligence in a background check with BRYAN KOHBERGER. And I also talked about University of Idaho, that I didn't feel like it was right that they got to determine that a crime scene was torn down. Now, both the defense and the prosecution agreed to it, but, I think it's a problem. But the one thing good that did come out of it was the people who were in my comment section yelling at me that I wasn't doing a fair job to cover both sides because I wasn't saying that there were tunnels under the house. That stopped. And the whole conspiracy nonsense of the tunnels being under the house all stopped. So that was, thank you, Eleanor. Don says, I always hit like before I come in. Sometimes I forget on the way out. Dwight says, the house was torn down. The University of Idaho made that decision. Yeah. The prosecution and defense and the attorneys, I don't think they really had much of a say in it. They agreed to it, but the University of Idaho, that house was donated to them by the owner after the crimes. And I think they wanted that house down, and they want this case to go away because it's bad publicity for the university that a crime like that happened. Avocado Toast says, I feel sorry for Molly. She had a difficult life already. That's the DoorDash driver. She certainly didn't need this as well. No. And if you think about it from Molly's point of view, how stressful it would be to know that had she made that DoorDash delivery 4 or 5 minutes later, if the restaurant Jack in the Box had been delayed, if she had hit an extra traffic light, if she had driven a little bit slower, if she had encountered the perpetrator inside that house, I don't think she would be here today. I think the only reason that Bethany and Dylan are alive is that they did not come out of their rooms while the perpetrator was in the house. So I feel badly for her too. And she does have MS. She talked about the MS hug. You can go back and watch my video, not the last live stream, but the one before that, where I showed the video of it. And you can hear her talking about an MS hug, and Veronica picked up on that and let me know about that yesterday. So thanks for that, Veronica. Squeaky Wheel says, Ann Taylor will try to discredit the DoorDash driver. It was dark, dimly lit, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And the good news is for the prosecution, maybe not for the defense, but the good news for the prosecution is that Molly did not get charged with a DUI or being intoxicated or anything like that. So I think that's really good news for the prosecution. And it's good news for justice because we don't, want that. Mara says the house is completely gone. No trace remains. It was a poor decision to tear it down before the trial. I agree. Thanks for modding today, Per Anderson. Francie says that the DoorDash driver was being a mature woman. They are usually far more aware of their surroundings, more so with her having seen her husband. Yeah. Misfit Nikki. Will this channel stream the full trial? Yes, I am streaming the full trial. We're going to watch it. The only thing we're not going to probably be allowed to stream is when they are going through the jury questionnaires. I love to watch that part, but I don't think we're going to be allowed to see it on this because I think that because of the amount of publicity on this particular case, I don't think we're going to get to see any potential jurors or anything like that. The judges even talked about sequestering the jury, which they expect this trial to last around 3 months. So that's a long time. Keola says, I want to commend you for the little nugget that you picked up from your followers about her having MS. I haven't heard anybody talking about that. Well, that was that's why I love to read your comments. That's why I love to interact with you guys because, I do my very best to bring you guys credibly sourced information, but I'm not perfect. And you guys pick up on stuff sometimes or ask questions about something that, I don't know about. This is why I love reading your comments. Subpoena says, are there only 2 DP cases attorneys in all of Idaho? No, but there are only 2 in that area, that region of Idaho. Don Marie says, Jessica is the best. Oh, thank you. Is the best platform on the true crime. Let's get her channel known. This lady works hard and deserves support. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I do really try to bring you guys credibly sourced information. I could have told you, I could have platformed WSU Kim. I did not platform her. I would have gotten more subscribers and clicks and views, but I could not. I felt like she just, I'm not saying she was or wasn't legitimate. I just had a lot of question marks about her. There was nothing that she, that she wouldn't even come on camera to show her face. And I just didn't, I was concerned that she wasn't legitimate. I didn't bring you guys tunnels under the house or any other nonsense. I tried to bring you guys credibly sourced information. Does this mean everything that I always report on is exact, or that I never speculate? No, but if I am speculating, I try to make it clear what I'm speculating on versus what the information I'm bringing you, so that there's not, a gray line there. And I've really worked hard over the past year and a half to bring you guys credibly sourced information, because you guys deserve that. You deserve that. So if you're a critical thinker who likes to have all the information to make up your own mind, then this is the right channel for you. Vicky says the best part of this channel is really there aren't conspiracies, just facts with sources. Thank you guys so much. Lawrence White said he's been discredited. She's talking about Cy Ray. He did get tossed out of another trial, but I don't want to say, I just think his technology is old. I don't think this is like personal about Cy Ray. I just think the technology is old and outdated that he was using, but maybe in this trial, he's going to rely on some other kind of technology. I don't know. DW says 8 pieces of hair found in BK's apartment. Right. And if any of those hairs link back to anyone that lived at the 1122 King Road home, that's a problem for the defense team. If the animal hair that was found in his Pullman apartment links back to Murphy the dog, that was Kaylee's dog. And I don't think he interacted with Murphy at all, but Kaylee and Maddie would have been interacting with him. And because the perpetrator interacted with Kaylee and Maddie, and I'm watching my words here, because he did away with them, and I think Kaylee did fight back. I think that there could have been transfer, but we won't know until the trial. There's so much, we didn't even know about the DoorDash driver. So I do think that is really interesting. DW says Molly probably had to pick him out of a lineup. Well, she said, all I know, we don't know. All she says is, I saw Brian. She doesn't say, I saw someone. She doesn't say, I saw something, because Dylan couldn't pick him out of the lineup. But Molly says she saw Brian. Barbara says, good evening, everyone. Hit the thumbs up on your way in. Subscribe. It's free. Yeah. Thank you. It wasn't a snowstorm on the night of the crimes. Maybe Vicky, you're talking about a different night, but on the night of the crimes, it was ice fog. It was ice fog. So to be out stargazing on an ice fog night, I think we'll see weather experts on the stand. Dwight said, yes, it was cloudy at the time of the crimes. You're right, Dwight. And Jessica said, plus the ID they found at his dad's house. So we haven't heard anything about the ID, but we didn't know about the DoorDash driver either. A lot of people were speculating that it was somebody named Emily, and they were, there was a lot of conspiracies about that. But there's an ID that was found inside a glove, inside a box at BRYAN KOHBERGER's parents' Brightsville, Pennsylvania home. And a lot of people feel like, and it's been reported, so it's been reported that the ID belonged to one of the victims. If this is true, so speculation alert here, if this is true, and the ID belongs to one of the victims, or to his co-worker at WSU who he installed security cameras to spy on her, or something like that, I think that's going to be a big problem for Ann Taylor and the defense team. DLM says BK has to be the one. There are too many coincidences. Yeah, the coincidences really are starting to add up. And Jet says, I heard she could identify the car, but not identify Brian. I haven't heard. I am only going to tell you what her words were. She told the Pullman Police Department, I saw Brian. Those are her words. She didn't say, I saw a white Hyundai Elantra. She didn't say, I saw a masked man. She said, I saw Brian. I parked next to him. So those are her words, not mine. Lolcow says, I find it strange if the DoorDash driver's husband. Why? I'm not sure what that would have to do with anything. Not everything is a conspiracy, guys. Diane says, unfair considering his phone recovery was illegally released and given to Dateline, and they have never found out who did this, regardless of the cameras to see who goes in, introducing driver just recently. His phone recovery was illegally released. I don't know if you could say it's been illegally released. Maybe it did violate the gag order. I don't know. I don't know if they gave him everything. I don't know. But we don't know who did it. Thank you so much for modding today, Per Anderson. Laverne says, does anyone think BK is okay with delaying the trial? I mean, if he's innocent, you would think he'd be anxious to prove it. Well, as I shared at the top of the show, I think that this is, my opinion. Opinions aren't facts. I think that, he benefits from sitting there. If he is found guilty, it's a longer time that he can stay alive, right? He also benefits from delays because witnesses pass away, witnesses move away, memories fade. It's a common defense tactic. Vicky says technology changes daily, right? And this is where I don't know, how much. And this just doesn't mean Cyree is a bad guy or a bad person, or but technology. And I think the reason that he sold his company back in 2021, that's 4 years ago. If you think about how many iPhones have we had since 4 years ago, how much technology has changed from, when a lot of people had a BlackBerry phone that, now have iPhones. And if you think about how much technology changed, even from the original iPhone, the iPhone 4, the iPhone 5 to now, it's really changed a lot. Yeah, please give this a thumbs up. I want to say thank you so much to Esmeralda for the $9.99 super sticker. Esmeralda asks, the DoorDash driver must have seen Brian after he unalived them because the food bag was in the kitchen, correct, Jessica? And all the mods are seriously the nicest on YouTube. Thank you so much. Our mods are fantastic. So the DoorDash driver would have seen BRYAN KOHBERGER. I don't know if she brought the food bag in. I don't know if she brought the food. I don't think the DoorDash driver brought the food bag in. I think the DoorDash driver delivered the food. This is just, I don't know. It could be something different, but this is what I think happened. I think the DoorDash driver delivered the food. And I think that the reason Xana was done away with and Ethan were done away with was they came out of the room, and it was related to putting that DoorDash bag back on the kitchen counter. Because how else did it end up back on the kitchen counter? So but that's such a great comment. Hi, Carol. I'm glad you're here today. Top Cat says Molly must have seen his face because she said he was looking up at a window. I just know she said that she saw, quote, I saw Brian. That's what she said. Pamela said, did the single glove found in BRYAN KOHBERGER's apartment match the glove that was found near the house? Not that I've heard of. And I want to tell you, the glove that was found near the house was found around Thanksgiving. So over 2 weeks after the crimes were committed. I really don't think, that law enforcement just missed a black glove line out there. I think it's more likely that it was dropped by somebody coming by to pay their respects to one of the victims. That it could have been just a looky-loo. A lot of people went to the house. A lot of YouTubers went to the house. It could have been dropped by a CSI lab person. It could have been dropped by a member of the prosecution defense team or one of the law enforcement. But the fact that it was found so many weeks later makes it unlikely that I think it was related to the crime. Chet said, you cannot even find out how many murders are committed in Idaho. They boast about transparency, but they hide everything. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on this, Chet. I think you can find out how many are committed in Idaho. Why do you think that they can't find that out? They have FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. They will provide you information. So I'm not really sure where that's coming from, or what, if I'm understanding your comment, and if I misunderstood it, I apologize. But I don't know. I'm not clear on why you think they're hiding the other crimes. I do think it's weird and creepy that the University of Idaho got to decide that the crime scene was being torn down. I do think it's creepy and weird that the WSU supposedly let Brian go on December 19th, the very day that law enforcement decided he was the perpetrator. He's the one that did it. And I think that they might have been tipped off. But besides that, I haven't been able to find anything else on that. Yeah, I will definitely follow up with that. Hi, Lisa. Welcome from beautiful Canada. Oh, well, I can't tell that. So sorry, Tori. I if you say it in chat, I might pop it up on the screen and try to answer you. But so listen, I still wonder if this was his first crime. I have not found any evidence that he committed a crime like this. I just want to share that. If I did, I would certainly have brought it to you. I haven't found anything else that he's committed this. Mara says, great question about the gloves. And Dwight says, Dion, he probably thought he had cleaned the knife thoroughly when he, yeah, I think he did too. And that knife sheath, according to the comments that were in Amazon about that particular knife sheath at the time, it was known to stick. That snap was known to be difficult. So I think he did wipe it down. I think he did. But, there's no perfect crime out there. Well, guys, I'm going over right now to the next live stream. I'm going to exit out of this one and go over to the Lori Vallow Daybell case. We're going to do an update on that. And then I'm going to do a Jack and Lily live stream. Those are the 3 cases I'm working on right now. And they all have breaking news. So we're going to do everything. But if you haven't subscribed to Reporter Room, please do. And please follow me over to the Lori Vallow Daybell case. We're going to talk about Melanie Gibb, Joe Ryan, who is Lori's 3rd husband. I think that is the first victim of Lori Vallow Daybell, not Charles Vallow. I think that Joe Ryan is her first victim. We're talking about Zulema Pasternez and Alex Cox. Just some very, very. Well, thank you for coming by to spend a little bit of time with me. Please subscribe and drop me a comment in the comment section below. Watch what words you use so I get to read your comment. Thanks for watching, and I will see you.